Hello, and welcome to today's session. My name is Tiffany Lissner, and I'm the Director of SQL Server Product Management at Microsoft. And I'm pleased to have Noel, Yuhanna, and Jeff North here with us today from Forrester Consulting. Noel Yuhanna is a Principal Analyst at Forrester, whose primary research focus is on customer usage experiences and broad industry trends of database management systems, information as a service, and data security, just to name a few. Noel is joined by Jeff North, a principal consultant dedicated to Forrester's total economic impact consulting practice. Forrester brings a unique approach to measuring the value of vendor solutions across various IT and business initiatives with the TI model. TI provides an ROA business case based on the cost, benefits, flexibility, and risk associated with a specific investment. We're excited to have Noel and Jeff join us today to talk about the total economic impact of upgrading to SQL Server 2012. Welcome, Noel and Jeff.
Thank you. So I guess the agenda for today is we will walk through some of the findings on database, data management technologies, what kind of things we hear from customers, and then going to dive into the EI study, the total economic impact study, which Forrester did as such. So one of the things we see in databases is that there's definitely a need for better performance and scale. And in fact, this is a survey we did end of last year. This is a survey for mid-sized to large organizations. When I say mid-sized, $500 million or more in revenue across all verticals. So this survey results it shows you what are the key data management issues you see as challenging in the organization. And what's interesting in this survey is the number one is performance. Right. I mean, most organizations are dealing with larger volumes of data, larger scale of transactions. Definitely makes it a challenging kind of an effort. Second, obviously, is higher availability. Availability is necessary because of many different reasons, because of mission-critical applications, globalizations, and what have you. And the third being the high data volume growth, which I think everyone is actually going through. Usually the typical kind of scenario we see is that data doubles for mission-critical applications almost every 2 years. So definitely a lot of data growth is happening in these scenarios. And I'm sure you guys are running into similar scenarios and situations with these challenges. Performance, availability, and growth is definitely one of those things we see in many organizations. This is a very interesting slide which talks about, if you look at the data growth, right, over the years, some of the growth we have seen, like in 80s, was 10% growth, 20% growth. Now we're seeing on an average database growth at 35%. Large critical application growth rate is about 60% annually. And this is obviously, there's no stopping here. and by the way, these are averages. We see organizations who have lots of data. Some run into petabytes. No, forget about terabytes. We are already talking about petabytes, actually. So definitely, this is definitely a big challenge. Now, what's actually creating these things of growth, right? I mean, what's driving this? The factors influencing these data growth is obviously we have these new applications which are emerging, mobile applications, Web 2.0 applications, app internet applications. Now these are types of new applications which obviously are being used by many organizations. And mobile is making its way into enterprises. They want to be able to leverage this data which they're collecting, right? Globalization is another area which we're seeing a lot more happening. Real-time data growth. Many organizations are turning out with many amounts of these data, which has to be leveraged for better business decisions. Compliance is a factor, and obviously decline in storage cost and BI-related issues as well. So, I mean, I'm sure some of these may be applicable to you in your organization as well. Now, obviously, when you have these larger databases, it creates a major challenge on performance, upgrades, migrations, security, backups, you name it, right? Try to run a 10 terabyte database. It still is difficult, right? And some of these things have to do with tuning and optimization and backups and recovery. If you run a 50 terabyte database, it becomes even more cumbersome to manage. Now, if you look at the trend over the last 10, 20 years, right, there's a lot more happening. And the good news is the database vendors are improving on the automation, the self-managing features, things like installations and updates and availability, migrations, and all of these things listed out there. And if you look at the trend over the last 10, 20 years, you'll see things have improved a lot. It's less challenging to do installations today of databases, less challenging to do some of these performance and tuning today than it was 10 years ago. And this is thanks to the database vendors who are really automating some of these things in the new releases, I guess. So things to consider for your enterprise database strategy going forward is to look at new releases from the database providers because they're highly improved automation, they deliver higher degree of management capabilities. In fact, based on our analysis and our research we have done for the last years on data management, typically the new release is about 15 to 20% in terms of productivity gains. So every new release which comes out from a database vendor typically gets you at least 15 to 20% improvements in productivity, improvements in the performance and scale and security. So definitely look at those things going forward. Database growth, if you are increasing the database sizes, look at automation from these new releases. Compression, database compression adoption is definitely picked up. I would definitely encourage customers to look at database encryption deployments for those large critical databases. Look at archiving. You can obviously archive data from the production systems. Cloud is definitely gaining ground. So if you haven't got a cloud for databases, think about that because that can really help you in provisioning these databases and better managing some of these databases. Looking for database availability, look at private clouds and public clouds. Clouds can definitely help you in leveraging some of these benefits in terms of cost, in terms of administration, and also database provisioning for testing and development environments. Cloud can definitely help you with that scenarios. With that, I would like to hand it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Noel. And for the next 12 or 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about a case study that Forrester has just completed called the Total Economic Impact, or TEI, of SQL Server 2012, the upgrade. And I'm going to talk about the methodology and Forrester's approach in these case studies. And then we'll go into the findings of the case study itself and talk about some of the things that we learned as we interviewed real customers and their experience as early adopters with Microsoft SQL Server 2012 specifically. And just a little bit of overview on a Total Economic Impact study. This is commissioned by Forrester, and it is the heart and soul of it is interviews with real live customers, in this case 10 early adopter customers that are already using SQL Server 2012. And we start by using Forrester Research, the likes of which Noel has just described in small part, and absorb that, then speak to some subject matter experts on the product management side at Microsoft, and then dive into these in-depth interviews where we learn the specifics around the financial implications, quantitative and qualitative aspects of making an investment in SQL Server 2012. And since it's very confusing to talk about 10 different companies, 10 stories in one 25-page document, we aggregate all of the things that we learn into a composite company, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. That's one enterprise that encapsulates all the things that we've learned in the study, and around that composite we build a financial model, and then around that we write a narrative describing the financial framework, quantitative and qualitative findings from the study. So you might ask, who did we talk to in this study? Well, it was a number of enterprises, 10, from various industries of different shapes and sizes. Here's a quick description of 5 of those study participants. And if you'd like to know who the other 5 were, then we're going to invite you to read the case study document. We'll give you links to that in just a moment. And the composite company. When we talk to our 10 customers that are currently using SQL Server 2012, we put all those findings into a blender and we come out with this composite. And in this case study, that's a financial services firm with 12,000 employees, lots and lots of customer records, heavy database requirements, $1 billion in transactions, mission-critical applications that have to be up all the time. And like the customers that we interviewed, this enterprise is upgrading to SQL Server 2012 from a mixed environment of 2005 and 2008, previous versions of SQL Server. We describe the database and IT team that is running this initiative, and then talk about the infrastructure in which SQL Server 2012 is being deployed. And as you might guess, one of the first things that we ask study participants during these interviews is why. Why are you investing in SQL Server 2012? Why now at this early stage? And we get a rich set of responses. Probably topping the list is the improvements in high availability and disaster recovery that 2012 brings, especially when it comes to supporting mission-critical applications. The study participants told us about the decreases in downtime, greater assurances for the data, the greater use that they get from secondaries for reporting and backup and replication and some other things, performance increases, and the list goes on. They talked about the new business intelligence capabilities that Server 2012 is bringing to their organization, being able to move those capabilities out of IT into the hands of the business units. And also talked about cloud solutions and the attractiveness of having a common set of tools for development and for administration in an agnostic environment, developing and administering for on-premise or private cloud, public cloud, hybrid kinds of environments, and building an application for on-premise this year which can be moved to a cloud environment next year. And then we get this catch-all category of sort of it depends. There are a whole number of reasons why companies are investing in SQL Server 2012, which are very specific to those enterprises or that industry. People told us about new features like the increased capabilities around spatial or the improved search capabilities, which were really one of the deciding factors for their investment now. And they told us about the cost effectiveness. Compared to other solutions, this was a compelling business case that we're going to talk about in just a moment. Before we do that, though, let's talk about what is this thing we call TEI. And I'm not going to belabor the methodology and take you through an extensive lesson on all sorts of arcane financial sorts of things. However, let's just go and get a quick overview. And let me tell you what TEI is not. It is not TCO, or total cost of ownership, that medieval methodology invented during the Renaissance. TEI provides a much more comprehensive view of technology investment. And as we've said, it's based on existing customer experience with the product. It is not what Forrester thinks. It's not what Microsoft thinks. It's what your customers have told us and how we've captured that voice of the customer and quantified it. So if you look at this picture and let your eyes drop on down to the bottom, there's the cost piece. Of course, we incorporate that. That's the TCO. It's also the easiest part of this kind of case study analysis. We spend a lot more of our time, however, understanding the benefits of the investment, the quantitative benefits and the qualitative benefits as well. And then we ask study participants to look into the future and warm up their crystal ball and tell us what kinds of opportunities might be created 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road because of the investment that they're making in SQL Server 2012 now. And we ask them how their technology roadmap might change, what business initiatives might be achievable because of the investment they're making now. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. These 3 elements of TEI are then pressure tested. We put them through a piece of the methodology which looks at the uncertainty for our assumptions and our calculations, and we basically discount our benefit calculations and assumptions and bump up our cost assumptions so that no reasonable person is likely to refute the financial framework that we're putting forward. All right, now we're going to talk about the case study itself. And once again, I'll remind you that the document, as well as an accompanying ROI estimator that will help custom calculate the ROI for your organization, are available, and we'll point you to those in a moment. And I said the cost is the easy part. Let's knock this out of the way quickly. Our composite organization is going to be looking at Enterprise Edition Core licenses for the product totaling $152,616. And we give the specifications for that price tag there and describe that in more detail in the document. And along with that is software assurance at a cost of $38,000 and change every year for this 3-year period under analysis. And our composite is also electing to purchase the Business Intelligence Server along with software assurance. That's nearly $28,000 at the end of 3 years. And then we spend a lot of time looking at the roles and the time requirements that are going to be needed to plan, design, and implement the product. And there is significant calculations behind that, but for our purposes today, the sum is $41,000 and change. And the table at the bottom, similar to those tables and exhibits in the document, shows us that at the end of 3 years, the cost here is $1/3 of $1,000,000. So just hold that figure in mind, because that's only relevant in relationship to the benefits that are generated by the investment. So let's review those. Customers told us that the IT group, the database administrators, and the systems engineers are going to have an easier time of it. And we've conservatively calculated the productivity improvement for those staff, starting at 7.5% in the beginning and ramping up to 15% toward the end of the 3-year period. Not all of the value accrues immediately, which is a realistic set of assumptions. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And we could spend all of the time here today and more just talking about the benefits to the DBAs and the other IT staff. Automated failover, the contained login convenience, recovery tools, backup, better use of secondaries, the list goes on. That's described in the document. Let's move on to the benefits for application developers. Somewhat more modest, starting at a 5%, ramping up to 10% in year 3. And again, a long litany of reasons why they're going to be more productive in their development around SQL Server 2012. Some cited spatial support and improved spatial capabilities as being a very important reason for their organization. Others talked about improved search or the Apollo column store. Some talked about the ability to build applications that are going to run in various environments, whether that's on-premise or in a cloud or in a hybrid, and can switch from one to the other in an agnostic fashion. Our financial firm is going to avoid some service level agreement penalties, and we've conservatively pegged that at $40,000 a year. It could be a lot more, but that is, consider that a placeholder. For some organizations, that's a large number. For others, it's merely a loss of face because downtime and unplanned outages cause embarrassment to their internal customers. And then the business units are going to see benefit. And with business intelligence capabilities and self-service reporting, alerting, being able to slice, dice, and visualize the data and make better use of it, we have assumed here that 300 staff, just 300 out of 12,000, are going to see a 25-hour boost to their working lives over the course of a year. And that's before we risk adjust. Here's the summation of those benefits that I've described. We're talking about $1,000,001, and that's compared to the $1/3 in costs. So already we see a very compelling financial outlook here, a very compelling business case for this investment. Here's the picture of what I've just described. The initial investment is about $210,000, and then when the SQL Server 2012 is underway, we've got software assurance in the red bars, and then the benefits accruing to a greater degree from years 1, 2, and 3. Now, I mentioned this thing called flexibility, and flexibility in Forrester's TEI methodology is not brochure speak, but rather it is the identification and, when possible, the quantification of opportunities or options, future options that are created by an investment that's made today. Whether or not the enterprise engages those projects down the line, there's value created by having them as possibilities. And so we asked the participants of the study to look down the road and warm up their crystal ball and imagine how might their technology roadmap change. How might their business units have new opportunities that would not be possible without this investment? And they give us a range of answers. And so we've basically bucketed them into these categories. And top of that list is a foundation for cloud computing and having a connected development platform, and indeed some are already engaged in pilots with Microsoft Azure. They talked about having common tools for development and admin, whether on-prem now, in the cloud in the future, but all of these are using common Microsoft bench skills that they've got in-house today, nothing exotic or hard to find. Another category of response is really scaling up and scaling out. And for our composite, an example would be expanding to international markets, going after customers in other markets without adding database resources. The database infrastructure, the database team will no longer be any kind of a bottleneck for these kinds of expansion initiatives. And then there's the category of those things that might have been capabilities, functionality in SQL Server earlier editions, like business intelligence, like security, but some of the organizations we talked to had not developed yet their business intelligence capabilities. Now there's much more of a draw to do so. And for those that have, they're going to want to expand. Security is a kind of a funny area of functionality. It tends to be overlooked, and it tends to be underutilized in SQL Server 2012. But with new advances there, we're going to see customers that are perhaps getting rid of third-party tools in favor of the security in the Microsoft product. And there are other examples of overlooked and now improved capabilities that customers are going to exploit. Okay, so here's the answer sheet. This is the answer for your chief financial officer or your budget masters. When we work through our return on investment calculations, we see that we've got a return of between 149 and 189%. And if you wanted to round that off to 150 and 190, that's permissible. A payback period of about 12 months, perhaps a little longer, that's the kind of thing that finance people want to see. If you say that the payback period is 5 years, they are not interested. If you say that it's 5 years, they don't believe you. And then here are the present value summations for cost, benefit, and then the net present value for this investment being something in the area of $500,000 or more. Compelling financial case. And so, in wrapping up this high-level overview of the TEI of Microsoft SQL Server 2012 upgrade, what did we learn? And customers told us a number of things that we feel are important and we want to share. There are, without doubt, benefits from high availability and disaster recovery, certainly greater database performance, business intelligence, as we've touched on, security, and other capabilities, all in the service of mission-critical applications. Customers told us they got an extra 9, or they got 2 more 9s for availability. That's a big deal. And these then funnel down to productivity benefits for both the IT people and the business unit staff as well. And then there's the all other category, the various reasons for upgrading. And if we were to sum that up, we would say that the customers responded with statements like, we are building the database platform for the future of our business. And they mentioned all of these things like fault tolerant, high performance, connected, cloud ready. But basically, this is the future of our business. They've made that decision and that commitment, and they're putting more of their database resources behind SQL Server 2012. Why don't we let the customers have the final word here on this presentation about this study. And I'll just share with you some of the things that we heard in interviews. Like, we can now grow at the pace of business and expand with additional customers and keep pace. We being the database team. Another customer said, now business people can do the analysis and the reports without new skills or a new vocabulary. The BI in SQL Server 2012 closes the IT iWorker gap without more work for IT. Personal BI becomes corporate BI, and we become a smarter, faster, in this case, hospital. And it doesn't get a whole lot bigger than this. We avoided a major database project that would have cost millions. That project is now obsolete before it was even gotten underway, and we're now able to run on 2 servers. Those are very expensive boxes, and a compelling business case when you save and avoid purchasing 18. So with that, I want to say thank you for spending time with us on this presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to Tiffany for concluding remarks.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to Noel and Jeff for joining us today, and thank you for sharing the exciting results that customers have been seeing from upgrading to SQL Server 2012. We're very excited about the results, and you can find more details on the Forrester TEI study both within the SQL Server launch site as well as the SQL Server main website. In closing, there's also much more to discover on SQL Server 2012 in our virtual launch experience, and I encourage you to explore the launch site for more information on the capabilities of SQL Server 2012, as well to download SQL Server 2012 so you can start experiencing the same benefits we just talked about. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks to Jeff and Noel as well.